Jason Schreurs, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Recovery Diaries in Depth.
You're most welcome, Gabe. Thanks for having me.
It is a pleasure, and I'm excited to say that this is our first go at video. So it's wonderful to see you and to have you be seen by our listeners and followers of this podcast. So yay for us for trying something new and scary.
Yeah, it's great.
And speaking of new and scary, I guess that's a good way to start. Writing about your mental health, that can be scary. Opening up about something so vulnerable. And, that's what we ask people to do all the time on Recovery Diaries. We're asking you to sit down and share a very vulnerable piece of you. I know what it's like from the other side from, I work with people on their essays. I, of course, read all the essays here, and experiencing them from that perspective. It's very hard, but you're the one actually doing it. So can you talk a little bit about what that experience was like?
Well, I've got a slightly different feeling about it. And because I am a writer, and have been for so long, that I felt like writing's always been for me a method of survival, in the sense that, I felt like I had to do it. I had to get the ideas out of my head and I had to express myself. I was doing that through mostly music writing, which is actually quite constricting. So I always felt like I was on the precipice of getting into more creative writing. But writing essays like the one that I wrote for OC87 Recovery Diaries it was almost like I needed to have something to spew out at that point, because I was just such a hard, rough place with depression, and I feel like I had to have some sort of a creative outlet. And it was, not to sound cold, but it was almost like it was material, right? It was something that I actually could express myself about, and it was the only thing I could really express about myself at the time. So, it wasn't hard, really. I mean, I think the purge was more of a release, and it was actually made it really quite smooth, and I just needed to get it out, and I think that was the way that I had to do it. It was harder to sit and wallow in things and be by myself and be depressed than it was to just to put it out there.
Do you think while you were in that place of sort of, as you put it, sitting and wallowing in those feelings, were you looking for outlets? Were you looking for ways to get it out?
At that point, it was really all I could do. I mean, I still was doing some music stuff. It was really rough, coming out of a diagnosis like that. It was really on the couch, can't get up, splitting headaches. I had a psychotic episode, so that's compared to a head injury. It was really getting bludgeoned by a cinder block, and so I think the other outlets really fell to the side, and I had a really hard time writing too. I basically gave up on it. I thought, I'm not going to bother doing this anymore. It's just not fulfilling me. One of the things about depression is you start to not enjoy anything that you used to enjoy, and writing was a huge enjoyment for me. So yeah, it was really just about, like I said, almost a survival technique. I knew how to write. I'd done it my whole life. So I'll get to the keyboard, and whatever comes out, and at least I'm getting something out. And the rest of those activities that I was really into kind of just fell away.
Have things come back for you since then?
Yes, hugely.
What was that process like, finding those things again?
Slow, difficult, painful. I slowly brought in things that I was interested in doing, but there was a new lens to it, because of course a lot of that was mental health, whereas I never really spoke about that before. There were kind of flashes of things that I saw in my writing in retrospect, but I never really tackled mental health as being a thing in my life. And so, all of a sudden I was really taking that on, learning a lot about bipolar, which I was diagnosed with in 2018, learning a lot about things like support groups and different modalities of therapy, and CBT and all those kinds of things. And really just immersing myself in it. So that's kind of how I got to a sort of a stable place. And then after that, I, got back into the bands, and I got back into the writing, and I got back into the podcasting and all those things, as well as, things like playing tennis, or just the sort of, going for hikes. Those all came back slowly. And now I'm at a place where, the mental health stuff is still there, and I'm very involved with advocacy and things like that, but it's not like a constant, like, I'm depressed, I want to die, it was, it's like more, I know that it's an issue I'm dealing with, but I'm managing it rather than just like fighting it. There's a certain amount of like giving in and realizing, this has to be dealt with.
Well, right. It's living with the thing. I feel like a lot of people think that recovery is, oh, I'm recovered and, now I don't have to deal with this anymore. But it really is a certain amount of acceptance of like, okay, this thing is here. I am living with this mental health challenge. It is a part of me. And I know that, so I live with anxiety and depression, and so much of my life has been, I feel, wasted in a way, spent fighting those two issues and, pushing up against them and railing against them and having them control me and me resisting that. But as I get older and have learned, okay, this shit isn't going away, no matter how hard I kick and scream, right? It's more about just accepting that they're here and learning to live the best life that you can with that. I don't know if that's been similar for you in some way.
Oh, exactly. I mean, that's basically what I would have said. One of the things that I really learned to put around language when it comes to mental health issues, and I learned this through other people that I talked to on the podcast, was that, like turning it around and saying like, okay, what am I recovering from? Like, where am I trying to get? Am I trying to get back to the way I was before being diagnosed? Because that was horrible, and that was also really scary and awful. And, or am I trying to find something new? And so, more of a transformation language than a recovery language, because really this is the chance for you to change and to be potentially obviously a different person, but kind of pushing through instead of pushing against it, kind of pushing through it. And I think now, I'm a totally different person than I was before. I mean, I'm still me, like I'm still got all those same, like traits and stuff, but it's way more controlled. It's way more measured. And I think the things that I'm doing now make a lot more sense. Yeah, I pulled off some like wild stuff when I was undiagnosed. Like, I mean, I was doing cool things, but now I'm still doing cool things, but I'm doing them in a way that makes a bit more sense or is more realistic to my life.
So that's something that I want to touch on that I think is really important to talk about. You're a very creative person. You're into music and writing and all of these different creative endeavors. And I think there's this seductive thing about bipolar disorder with mania where, creative people are like, oh, wow, well, when I'm hypomanic, like, shit's really good. And, I'm creating all the time and I'm staying up till 3 a.m. and I'm doing all this amazing stuff. And then, hypomania slides very scarily into full blown mania. But people do talk about how it feels good. And especially creative people have heard this. What is helping you? I'm assuming you're on medication, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is helping you maintain and being able to say, yes, I did pull off some wild stuff when I was unmedicated and untreated, but this is better. And I'm not tempted to play with fire, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, that also is something that I've thought a lot about and talked to about people on the podcasts that come on. But what I've realized is that, yes, when you're unmedicated, undiagnosed, and don't know what's going on, and you're suffering through, huge bouts of depression, huge bouts of like mania. Okay, so most people with bipolar have kind of a half and half-ish thing. I mean, some people have, like months or even years of depression and then maybe like a week of mania. But a lot of the people that have bipolar that I know, and I know for myself, we're dealing with a kind of a half and half. That's kind of the whole idea is, you're going like, depression, mania. And so when you're depressed, you don't want to do anything. So you're not creating anything when you're depressed. You might be wallowing. You might be writing some thoughts down. You might be like struggling with stuff, and a lot of good art comes out of struggle as well, but you're really not creating or outputting anything. And when you're manic, you're doing all kinds of stuff. You're staying up all night and you're writing, like an album worth of songs in 3 hours or whatever you're doing. You're running all over the place at parties. So you're getting a lot accomplished when you're manic, but it may not always be stuff that you can hold on to or use in the end, right? It might just be like pipe dream type stuff. One of the things about
Even
mania is
like
you can have,
incoherent. And
yeah, or delusional, right? Like a lot of the stuff that I was doing was just like blah, it was like there wasn't a lot that I could hold on to in the end. And so I think, there's a misconception about, okay, well, I'm going to be super creative if I'm off my medication. I'm going to be super creative and do all these things. And you're only working on half time, first of all. And the stuff you are doing when you're manic can be quite unpredictable and not really cool, but maybe way too cool, So, and a lot of people that I deal with, like I do a support group that I facilitate for bipolar folks, and a lot of these people talk about, yes, like I'm feeling quite flat. I may not be depressed, I may not be manic, I may be like what we call stable, but I'm just like flatlining it, right? So, let's see what I can do if I, maybe I'll go off my meds because it feels so great to be manic. Or maybe I'll start to feel good on hypomania and start to feel kind of like really in the groove. Well, let's just see how far I can go with this before things go sour. And things do go sour for a lot of people. You end up in the hospital or sometimes worse.
Or worse.
So, yeah. So I think, it's all about, I wouldn't say boring, but I would say like more measured. One of the guys in my group always says, "Hey, a boring day is a great day," for a person with bipolar. But I don't
no handcuffs, no restraints, no forced medication. Boring. Give me boring. That's great.
Yeah, but boring let's call it boring. I call it stable. With that comes a lot of really great stuff. Like I'm in a band now where I've written songs that I never would have written when I was manic. Everything was just all about like performance art stuff, like smashing things and screaming and like improvisational weirdness. And now I write songs that I'm actually like, hey, this is a good song. It's really fun to be in a place where things feel realistic, I guess.
How did you get into music?
Oh, well, when I was a kid, I got into music mostly through skateboarding, getting to skateboarding and really enjoying the thrill of that, and then kind of finding music that was, kind of in alignment with that. So a lot of punk rock and metal. But I was quite young. My parents had music and, they played it around the house. And then I remember I had a birthday party where I only invited one person to the birthday party. And my rule was like, you have to buy me an album. And he bought me a Tina Turner album. And I was like super stoked.
Wow.
I've just always loved music. It quite quickly got into the heavy and the fast and the screamy, and that was kind of what I needed. I needed to have that outlet. I needed to hear back what I was hearing in my head, which was a lot of anguish when I was younger too. So yeah, that's how I found it, and I never really looked back. I've been doing this music stuff for a long time, decades and decades now. So it's meant to be.
Yeah, and I know that they're intertwined, but my next question is about writing.
Yeah, same thing. Remember when I was reading magazines when I was a kid, I always thought at that point, it's like, I want to write about music. I don't want to be in bands. I want to describe and be creative. And that quickly got into, volunteering for a bunch of magazines that were writing about music. And I just kind of went with it. And, I was just doing a lot of that stuff. And I think, I always kind of wanted to be a writer when I was a kid. I remember writing things for English class and stuff and thinking that's what I want to do. But I think until I found the music angle, it didn't really make a lot of sense. Like I wasn't thinking I'm going to write a novel when I'm older. I was thinking like, I want to write about stuff that I care about.
Mm. And the support group that you facilitate, I mean, I know I read in your bio that you did that, and I was like, well, I wonder if he's still doing that because it's been, quite a while.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got into that? Did you use support groups in your recovery, group therapy? And what was it like to become a facilitator? What's it been like?
Oh, it's been amazing. We actually just had our weekly meeting last night. It's so validating. I never feel like I'm being like the leader of anything, even though I call it directing traffic, like, okay, you're next or whatever. But I always feel on total equal terms with these people. Some of them I just completely admire for what they've done in their journey of living with bipolar, sometimes for 30, 40 years. Other folks I'm super inspired by because they've just been diagnosed even last week and they're right in the thick of it. And so it's an amazing experience. the reason I got into it is because when I was coming out of the hospital, one of the very first things I did was go to a support group at the hospital. And I walked in and thought, okay, well, because when you get diagnosed with something, especially with me, I'd never really heard of bipolar before, which is wild because I got diagnosed in my mid 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And so to walk into a room and realize that, oh, wait a second, there's 12 people in this room and they're all dealing with things too. Because, I think my image was I'd walk in and just be like me and one other person and we both just cry or something. It wasn't like this feeling of support. From there, I just went and got training so I could do my own groups because I felt like I kind of knew how they worked after being at that one for a while. And I thought, hey, this is a chance for me to volunteer. Volunteering is amazing for folks that are living with mental health issues because, of course, all of a sudden that creates a purpose. It's like I have things that I can do and I can, I can kind of be understood at the same time.
Since you were published here, it's been a while. I know you have 2 essays on the site, but it's been some time. What has changed for you?
Well, it's interesting because looking at this article or essay that I wrote for you guys, it's hard to read it because it's like things have changed so much. I remember it and I know that it rings true for me in that space. But yeah, it's like, okay, was it me that wrote that? Like, yes, I know that it was, and it is about me, and there's some stuff in it about like my life, and I know the things that I've done, but it's just like my outlook is so different. Like I don't feel like my depressions get nearly as bad as they used to, and so I'm trying to identify with a person, whatever, 4 years ago, whatever it was, that was just in so much pain and so much existential crisis. And now I feel like I belong in my life. I know what I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm here. And so, yeah, it was tough to look back on that. Things have changed huge. It's to use the bipolar sort of signal. It's like, if you go the ups and the downs of bipolar, it's like, like all of a sudden now I've totally completely like, closed that gap that used to be there. And that's been a very slow process. I keep charts for my moods every day. And if I look at all of them over the course of that 4 years, I can see how that slowly has come back to the middle of stability. And that's a very slow, long process, but it's really cool to see it on paper.
So you mentioned something that I wanted to talk about too. So we'll talk about it now. You talking about the charts that you keep. Do you call them mood charts or?
Yeah, mood charts.
Yeah. So, you're on medication. You're obviously seeing somebody to monitor medication. And are you in like talk therapy too?
Yeah. I do somatic therapy, but it's still
okay. Talk about that. Yeah.
Therapy. Yeah. Oh, somatic therapy is just like body based. So close your eyes and kind of start to feel your body and look at places that are holding tension, and then kind of look at places that are calm and try to like. It's sort of similar to other forms of therapy, except that you're not talking as much. But of course, with me, I'm a talker, so I go in there and I talk for the first 25 minutes of an hour session, and then we get into.
Okay, Jason, close your eyes now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew, but
it's hard to just be present in the body and not just be thinking the whole time about stuff. And but it is. I think it's been really valuable, but I think it's way more of an organic process that a lot of people would think. You don't come out of there with like grand revelations, but I think because you're in your body and you're kind of releasing different parts and different things slowly over the course of, because I used to think, hey, this isn't working. Like what a bunch of, like I come out of here and I feel like nothing happened. But after being in it for several years, I can see how my system is really settled. And bipolar, of course, you get a dysregulation in your system as well. Things can get really hairy.
So what helped you stick with it? Because I'm very much like this, like if I think something's bullshit or I just decide arbitrarily something's not working for me, I can give up very quickly. So I'm curious about how you kind of comforted that impulse in your mind to stay.
Well, a huge thing is, and I'm sure, in the States it's a huge thing, more so than in Canada because I'm living up here, is that it was free. So I think if I had to pay for it, I probably wouldn't have gone back. I would have been like, you know what, the value isn't here. I'm paying $100 a session and I just can't justify it because I'm low income. So, but I was given a lot of sessions through the victim assistance program, in relation to childhood abuse. So like I got all these free sessions, and then when I was done those, the therapist was like, you know what, I'm just going to keep you on pro bono. So yeah, that was a huge thing. I think it was just like being stubborn and just thinking, you know what, like this doesn't feel like it's really doing anything, but like let's just keep doing it and see what happens. And I was able to get out a lot of, like trauma stuff too, like near the beginning. And that was like, okay, this can't be bad. What ended up happening is it really went into more, like I said, the system-based body stuff. And I don't want to go half the time. I'm like, this is whatever. But whenever I go, I feel like I did something for myself. You come out of therapy, I do, with like a big headache. And you're like, well, why did I do that?
Yeah.
But I can see how it's beneficial. And even if it's just talk therapy for an hour, I'm still getting place to vent.
When you were first diagnosed with bipolar, do you remember resisting the diagnosis, or did everything kind of click? Or was it something else for you?
It was like no resistance at all. A lot of people deal with that. A lot of people deal with like, hey, this isn't a thing. Or for me, it was just like, oh, this is what it is. This is what's been going on. Because I always felt like I was super weird. I was doing a lot of things that were kind of against my, my morals and ethics too. Like I was like, this isn't me. Like, I'm a good person. Why am I doing this thing? And it was a total explanation for what was going on. Because I was obviously really scared. Like I didn't know why I was having all these delusions, and then was in a psychotic episode. I didn't know why I was. Before that, I was depressed sometimes for 4 months. I didn't understand what was going on. And then, things just sort of clicked when I went into the hospital and my family brought me in. And then the psychiatrist, after 15 minutes said, yeah, this is what it is. And here's your medication. And there wasn't a lot of like, it was just, for her, it was just very, very clear. You're in a manic state right now. You're in a psychotic state. Can you, people might resist. Maybe they have to go up to the psych ward. Me, I was just like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. What do I do now? Yeah.
I'm glad for you. I'm glad that it clicked, and that you got what you needed. A little late in life, maybe, but sometimes things happen when they need to.
Yeah.
And since we're talking about that diagnosis, what a nice way to segue into your essay, which I'm very excited to have you read. It is called A Fractured Journey, Feeling the Throes of Bipolar Disorder Before Diagnosis. And whenever you're ready, I'll just have you take it away.
Processing 1. Once upon a time, there was a man who felt like he didn't deserve happiness. So he sabotaged everything and lived in misery until he died. Wonderful things happened to him. Wonderful people came into his life. He turned that wonder into misery and ended up alone and afraid. The happy ending does not exist. Processing 2. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived a happy life, loved by many. This man was able to find peace in his life. He didn't ruminate on his decisions and instinctively knew what to say and do to find happiness. He was a born leader who was able to inspire people and himself. Everything he set out to do in his life, he did with hard work and passion. The happy ending does exist. Depression 1. I'm wallowing in the misery of being alive, a selfish idiot who only cares about himself and isn't able to make even the simplest choices in order to feel better. I should be able to allow those around me to feel my positive energy instead of this sick, miserable, wallowing negativity. Why can't I just be happy? Depression 2. How many times can I fuck up before I give up? I want to crawl in a hole and die. I feel like the world's biggest failure and I have no purpose on this earth other than to screw things up and make things worse. The only thing keeping me here is my family and friends, and I'm not even sure they miss me at this point. I am such a waste of space and I want to die. I feel like I'm crafting something dramatic here so someone else can read this and help me. I am fucked and I don't know how to fix myself. I can feel the weight of depression pinning me down and rubbing my face in the dirt. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Existentialism. I'm feeling a bit better. The medication dulls my emotions and I don't have the same urges to disappear. My head constantly aches from the stress, but feelings of worthlessness fade through the day. It's always the hardest when I first wake up. The morning walk helps to distract me, but when I come home it hits me hard. What am I doing with my life? Where am I going? What was I put here to do? What is my purpose? I can't do the simplest of things to keep myself occupied. Looking at job postings is torture because I know I can't bring myself to do anything. It feels like I'm on a planet full of people who all have jobs and purposes while I wander around with no reason for being here. Regular life distracts me, but I sit here, aimless, while everyone else is working. The answers aren't getting clearer. I'm not looking for them. Hope? I know the answers, but I'm still not coming any closer to finding them. I have a bunch of options, but all of them involve doing something. I have had a problem with rumination for as long as I can remember. When I try to make a decision, I freeze. It could be whether to start a new career or what to make for dinner. Either way, I freeze in my tracks. That's a constant in my life. I'm acutely familiar with the concept of fly traps. But if a friend reaches out to me to go for a walk, I spring into action. I don't have to think about it, I just do it. I can often use a serious jolt. I've read about electroconvulsive therapy to reboot the brain, but isn't that a little bit extreme? My counselor says I have situational depression. An electricity coursing through my body doesn't sound like the proper treatment. But still, a shock could shake me loose. Maybe I'm shutting down after so many years of moving so fast. I've been going hard since I was 14 and spent years writing and editing for music magazines, more than I can recall right now. I held down full-time jobs at newspapers that stretched way into overtime, helped to raise 4 kids, booked punk shows and ran a punk rock mail order, all happening at the same time. The amount of work I used to do on a daily basis amazes me now. How did I get it all done? So many projects, so many ideas. Busy work, typing, data entry, writing and editing for 12 hours a day, packaging up all those music mail orders, all of it every single day, morning to evening, then again at night. No peace of mind, never for long at least. Now I'm here and it's just me, myself, and I, sitting at a keyboard and failing to rid myself of this infection. This busy life that stuck with me for decades and feels impossible to shake. Did years and years of overworking myself and letting stress consume me put me deep into this hole? If I slow down too much, will I be eaten alive or survive the mauling? Questioning. Trying to clear my mind. Most thoughts are past or future, where I trap myself. Either I regret the past or worry about the future. Present is real life. Things are happening right now that deserve my attention. Things will make me happy again, but I'm too blind to see them. Smiles feel nice. This is proven. Worry doesn't feel good. This is proven. How do I calibrate myself to maximum enjoyment? Running away on fancy vacations? Following punk bands around on tour? Burying myself in another job so I can justify doing these things on my vacations? Maybe I need to figure out that happiness bit first. Desperation. Maybe I'm getting better. It feels like I could be, but honestly, I have no idea at this point. I am completely exhausted from months of worry and stress. I wake up every day hit with overwhelming anxiety and depression. My first thoughts are usually about the dread of another day, or how soon I can go back to bed. The anxiety makes my heart jump at everyday sounds and movements. The depression feels like a pile of chainmail thrown over me. I'm stumbling through a fog of emotional pain. Loneliness, vulnerability, guilt, shame, remorse, sadness, boredom, a general sense of negativity. The forced smile on my face crushed by a blood-curdling scream of, why won't anyone fucking help me? When you see me laugh, please cherish it because I can't. Realization. Maybe I'm meant to be a nobody, an unspoken hero even. Someone who goes to work, doesn't stress, then goes home and lives a peaceful life. People remember the person, not the things they do. Is that true? If I can be who I've always wanted to be, a stable husband, father, brother, son, friend, maybe what I do isn't as important as the person I am. Maybe the things I do are just a bonus. Maybe anything extra is just the icing, and maybe that icing doesn't have to be sickly sweet. Maybe I'm meant to help people out when they need it, stick up for what is right, and spend time with and put effort into people that deserve it. Maybe being a nobody is the goal. For so many years, I put value on what people think of me, what my status means to those around me. I've had a fear of abandonment and being harmed since childhood sexual abuse, and I've spent my life trying to please others instead of taking care of myself. I'm finally ready to be that nobody who only wants to be known as a somebody to the ones I love. That starts with myself. Diagnosis. Yesterday, I found out that I have bipolar, formerly known as manic depression. Thinking back, this explains a lot. Reading back on my writing, it becomes clear. A lot of what I wrote had depression and mania peeking through, cries for help from between the lines. When I was depressed, my writing was dark, seen through a lens of despair. When I was manic, I ecstatically pounded on my keyboard. Everything was awesome. Knowing what I've been living with for all these years explains a lot of my struggles, but that comes with mixed feelings and uncertainty. But I'm used to that. I think back on my life and can't rub away all my bad decisions or shameful behavior, but I can find ways to explain them now. My diagnosis has opened pathways in my brain. Clarity may just be what my decades of confusion need. I feel like writing something like wish me luck on this incredible journey, but that feels way too optimistic and super cheesy. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived with bipolar. He'll be happy to take an ending with mixed results.
Jason, thank you so much for reading that and for writing that.
No problem.
My favorite line is, when you see me laugh, please cherish it, because I can't. It's a real gut punch for me, and maybe because I've been there, and I know a lot of people have. It's taking me a minute to collect myself after hearing that piece, which I think is a good thing. The way the essay feels to me is it feels like a lifetime. You know, the essay, it's a smallish snapshot of time, but it feels like you're writing your entire lifetime up until yesterday. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Is that how it feels to you?
I hadn't really thought about it like that. No, I don't think so. I'm glad that a person that hears it or reads it is thinking that, because it makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people's journeys is like there's so much before diagnosis that is kind of almost it feels like it's everlasting, like it's going to be that way forever, and then the diagnosis is kind of that realization moment. I think for me it was really like, what's going to come out here? Like what am I struggling with? And I think one of the themes that comes up in the essay is like, what is my purpose? What am I supposed to be doing right now? I know it's not laying on the couch with a brutal headache and feeling like I want to die. I know it's not, like being on a walk and dragging myself around and thinking I want to run into the forest and never come back. Like, that's not why I'm here. That's my mental health issues talking, right? So I think it was more about, just kind of trying to find sense in what had happened before, but more in a way of like, a lot of things came up when I was first diagnosed around, like one of the big things is when I was working a really stressful job and lots of hours, and there was all these other things going on. So I was trying to sort of get a snapshot of what it was like in that part of my life. But I think by doing that, it's natural to go back and sort of recapture what had happened before that. So I think it was like almost at the same time, it was like one like snapshot, but also that broadened out to other things. And I think a reader would be more inclined to see that than me, because I was just like, I was trying to be in the moment. I was in the moment, and whatever comes out, comes out.
Yeah. And I'm very grateful for what did come out, because I think it's such a beautiful piece. And I think especially your descriptions of what those depressive pockets feel like. Um, so often when I'm reading a mental health essay, the first draft at least, a lot of people are writing things like, the dark cloud of depression, or, battling my demon in the dark. And you have such a fresh and very earnest and very uncliched way of bringing people to understand what that feels like, with a lot of art and a lot of heart also. So I just wanted to recognize that. I think, I don't know, we ask people to write these essays, and just because you live with a mental health challenge doesn't necessarily mean that you're a great storyteller. But you have such a facility with words. So I just wanted to tip my hat to you there. It's just such a beautiful essay to listen to.
Thanks. Yeah. I think if you're a writer and you're artistic and your writing is very creative, and you're not falling into some of the same cliches. And everybody has cliches in their writing. I'm just as guilty. But I think it was what I was thinking as you're saying that is like, I'm a punk rocker, right? Like punks do things the way they want to do them, and screw it all if you don't like it. And I think that really inspired my writing. And I wrote a book about punk rock and mental health as well, called Scream Therapy. And the whole thing is in that style. It's very much like in your face, and people read it and like, whoa, but I can't do it any other way. And so unconventional would be the word. Like my writing is unconventional. I think that's what draws a lot of people to it. It's like, it's not the same. It's just like, it's almost it's a challenge, I guess, to I don't know, I feel like I'm blowing my own horn now, but it's a challenge to conventional writing in some ways.
I mean, it's what drew me.
Less Schreurs, but I feel like I've got some sort of spark.
Yeah, and it's what drew me to you when I got your first submission, and I knew there was something unique and exciting here. So I don't think it's tooting your own, and if it is, toot your own fucking horn. Who cares?
Yeah.
That's okay. Nothing wrong with that.
Having said that, I really don't like the piece anymore. Like, I'm glad people like it, and I think it's natural for a writer not to look back on something they wrote 4 or 5 years ago and be like, "Oh."
I hate everything I've ever written except the very last piece I've written. Whatever's newest, I like, and then in a couple of weeks, I won't like that anymore either. So I understand.
Yeah.
I have two questions before we go. You were talking about being a punk musician, and it's my way or the highway. How did you parse that with working with an editor? Because you worked with Evan for both of your essays. So in the one sense, it's like, I want to be unconstrained and I want to say everything my way, but you're also working with an editor. So what was that like for you, if you remember?
I think I've always been pretty good with that. I've had some bad editors over the years, and I went to butt heads with them. But I think for me, it's more about like, I'm putting it out there, and now it's not really mine anymore, right? Like, I've written it, it was mine, and then now it's out. And so if an editor wants to work with that and find the strengths and the weaknesses and be constructive with their criticism and be really cool with their, whatever changes they want me to make, then I feel like, okay, well, it's great to have someone else's opinion on it. When I was manic, everything I wrote was the best.
Genius, of course.
When I was depressed, the stuff I had to struggle to get out was awful. So to have an objective opinion, it's great. So to me, that was an opportunity. And luckily I always worked with, more alternative publications and stuff too. It wasn't, I wasn't writing for the New York Times or something. So that was a blessing as well. But ultimately it was more about, okay, it's out in the world. It's not really mine anymore. I wrote it, but it's not my property. In a sense of like intellectual or like emotional property. Yeah.
Last question. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to in your life? In the short term, in the long term, just in general?
Just living it, really. I mean, I've got projects that I'm working on that I'm excited about, but I'm excited about being stable. And actually, one of the most glorious things that I'm excited about is that sometimes I don't think about bipolar. I don't think that I'm living with it. I don't think this is a bipolar symptom. I don't think, and that was just such a consuming, like, that's all I thought about every single day, every single minute. And it was like trying to figure out ways to deal with it. You know, like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit excited to something. Oh, is this mania? Like
Mm-hmm.
questioning myself, not accepting it, like, you know, like not accepting that the fact that, not accepting, not that I wasn't accepting the diagnosis, more like, you know, I can't accept that this is happening to my life right now. Like, you know, it's like really a lot of like um, just stuff that interfere with my day to day. So I'm really excited about just being stable, managing the diagnosis, knowing that if I have some symptoms that I know what they are now, and I can work with them. And, you know, it's really cool to be like feeling quite low, and like, and then kind of just being able to pull out of that without really knowing it. Whereas before it was like, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling low, I'm feeling the worst, I'm feeling awful, I want to die. Like, it was just this spiral. So yeah, I'm excited about living, and I'm excited about, you know, the projects I'm doing here and there. I've got a music festival coming up in August in town here that I'm putting on. I'm excited about being in the band. We're jamming later today in the old jam space behind me here. You know, excited about my partner and our relationship. Excited about, yeah, everything that wasn't, everything that's real. You know, when you're manic, you draw up all kinds of plans. They don't make any sense, usually. And so those were things that I was excited about. But then now I realize, hey, wait a second. Like, yeah, I'm excited, but I'm also doing it. Like, I'm also doing the work, and I'm being realistic about things. So yeah, it's more of
Everything
an
that's real.
overall outlook that I'm excited about than specific things.
That's wonderful. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for everything that's real for you. Um, take us home by letting everyone know where they can find you. Where can they find your music? Where can they find your podcast, your book?
Yeah, I've got everything at screamtherapyhq.com. So screamtherapyhq as in headquarters.com. The book is you know, petering down with sales, but, you know, I just got a review yesterday from someone over in UK, and they were super stoked on it. So if people get it, it's still there for them. Kind of like with the essay, you know, like,
Yeah.
it feels old to me, but new to other people. And then the podcast is there as well. You know, podcasts, you can find it in all the different platforms. But if you want to go to the actual website, it's screamtherapyhq.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was so wonderful to spend some time with you.
You're most welcome. It was good to talk to you again, and really enjoy working with you for the 2 essays that I wrote.
Maybe there's a third in the can somewhere down the line. We'll see.
Could be.
Thank you, Jason.